Sound good? Okay, so we're gonna work on kind of the next aspect. Let me see what's going on here. So I wanted to show you this thing because I think it's really helpful to know. So there's another kind of content-aware fill button that could be really, really helpful. So in this image, I have this kind of guy riding his bike through the image, and he's really blurry and he's distracting, and I don't like him. So the easiest thing to do is to use our lasso tool, create a nice like lasso around him. So I'm just kind of using our lasso tool. You don't have to be precise. We just kind of want to get a good outline around him. Not a lot of extra information, but enough. So make sure you don't cut off any chunks of him. Not a lot. Select it. Great. So then we go to Edit, Fill, Content Aware, and if we press OK, and we wait a little bit of time, he disappears. And so I think that's a really helpful way to get rid of some information. It becomes a little bit noticeable here and here that he was there, but we can also fix that with the clone stamp. So we'll just click, Option click, and then replace some information. And Option click and replace some information. And if we do this a couple different times, it will start to become a little bit less noticeable. And then I'm going to try to mirror this kind of line of the sidewalk without any kind of distractions from this guy kind of coming through. Because I don't want it to look too unnatural or too edited. So I think this is a really helpful tool. It takes a little bit of time. It's a little tedious sometimes, but I think overall it's going to help you produce a really nice kind of finished product. And it takes a little bit of time, but then once you do it, and this one, it's still a little bit noticeable there, but then when I kind of zoom out, it's like, I think I could continue to work on that and make it a little bit better. But something to keep in mind that option, or that tool is really nice for getting rid of big details that would be really hard to erase. And so that becomes an easy additional kind of content-aware tool to use as well. So just something to keep in mind as we move forward. So once again, I'm going to kind of shift to select the different things, right? So I'm going to click on one, hold Shift, click on the next one, and then I'm going to be able to select several different options. And here, I'm going to open these in Photoshop, but you'll notice this time, instead of clicking on the Edit in Adobe Photoshop 2020, I'm going to do Open as Layers in Photoshop. And so the difference between these two is that if you edit in Photoshop, it's going to open each one of these images, each one of these guys, as a separate Photoshop file. If you click on Open in Layers in Photoshop, it's going to open it in Photoshop as a single Photoshop file with multiple different layers. So it's taking some time to read the files, and then it loads them on it. And I'll click on the next video to show you how that works. So here, you'll notice that I've got all 4 of my images that show up in Photoshop as different things, right? As different layers, but in the same project folder, in the same file. So that's really helpful for some things as well. I think it's really helpful if you're going to do focal stacking, which is what we're going to work on now. So I'm going to select all of, So I'm going to select all of my layers. How I do that is I click on the top one, hold Shift, and click on the bottom one. And then I'm going to go to Auto Align Layers. And what this is going to do is make sure that in each one of these images, this line is the same. In each one of these images, this line is the same. Sometimes it works really well, sometimes it does not. I playing with the different options. The auto one can distort and stretch your pictures. Reposition is not going to distort or stretch your pictures. So I always try the reposition first. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the auto works better. Sometimes you'll get a much better result if you do it yourself. So you're gonna have to play with which one of the auto align options works best for your project. And it's gonna take some experimentation. So I recommend that you try it a couple different times, a couple different ways. So here, now all my pictures have been auto aligned, and the idea is that they kind of connect, they all kind of align, right? So now you'll see that some of the pictures have moved slightly, which means I'm getting this kind of white and gray checker coming through. And that's okay. And this is why taking pictures on a tripod is really helpful, because if you use the tripod, the auto align isn't going to shift or move things too much, and you're not going to get as much distortion. So once I'm really happy with how they're all aligned, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to check the computer's work to make sure he did a good job. And then once I'm happy with what I'm seeing, I'm feeling good, then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try to auto blend them together. Uh-oh. I lost a file. Give me 1 second to find it. So I'm going to go to File, Edit, Auto Blend Layers. And once again, the auto options don't always work great. It's really important that we try it, because sometimes it'll be really helpful and sometimes it won't. So here it gives us two options, right? A panorama or a stacked image. And I am doing a stacked image, right? Because I'm doing focal stacking. I want the stuff in the front to be in focus, the stuff in the back to be in focus. You can click on seamless tones and colors, but I think the results you get are going to be wild, so I don't do it. You can also content-aware fill transparent areas, so any edges that aren't aligned, where there's like the white and gray checkers, it will automatically fill that. But once again, anytime you're letting the computer do most of the thinking, the chances are you might not get the results you want. So I'm going to press OK, and it's going to think through this for a bit. Which brings us to this video. So then you'll notice here that it's created this mask, and there's certain kind of like, here I can see there's chunks everywhere, chunks everywhere, chunks everywhere. But I'll notice that like if I look here, this chunk is really kind of the central point. If I look at this one, this chunk is really the central point. If I look here, it's kind of like around those two chunks, and then this one is really focusing on kind of the background. And so what it's doing is it's trying to consider like, it's trying to read what it thinks is in focus and what it thinks isn't in focus. So if I look here, this looks super in focus. But as I start to look through this, I start to notice some weird things like this, or up here with the bridge. It's getting a little wild, right? And so I'm looking through kind of my different layers, and I think it made some good decisions, but overall, they're a little funky up here. And so I'm not super happy with how the auto blend worked. And so this probably isn't the way for, this might not have been the best solution for my project. Especially once you get in here, see how blurry this is? So it's got some parts that are clear, some parts that are blurry, and there's some pretty bad cut and paste jobs, kind of especially over here too, right? So I don't think the auto blend was the option for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just press undo. And I'm going to do it manually. I'm going to do it myself because this clearly did not work the way that I wanted it to. So I'm going to show you how to do it yourself. So I've got these 4 different layers here, right? And if I look through them, you can tell a drastic difference between that shot and that one. Do you see how they change? Right? There's a lot of different kind of focal points. So I'm going to arrange my layers. I try to arrange them the closest focal point to the furthest focal point. So the thing with the closest focal point is always going to be my top layer. And the thing with the furthest focal point is going to be my back layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the brush tool and create a mask, clicking on the rectangle with the circle. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the brush tool to eliminate information that is out of focus in this first picture, in the one with the closest focal point. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just eliminating the information and hiding that information. I'm kind of tucking it away behind my mask of anything that's not in focus. So really that means anything kind of past here, because it's all quite blurry. Because there's really not a lot about this image that's in focus other than this part, which I think is super important. And I'm going to make sure that I'm using kind of a soft edge. So in my hardness of the brush, I want to make sure that it has a soft edge. So I'm getting some nice feathering so that these pictures look pretty uniform. So now if I select and highlight this next image, all of a sudden, more of it is in focus than before, right? But here it looks a little blurry. And I can look at my mask and kind of see that I've only selected that one chunk, right? And I can see how things are getting in focus and out of focus as I do that, as I turn on and off my layers. And so that will really help me figure out kind of which layer is my next layer, my next mask. So then I've made a mask for my second layer, and what I'm going to go ahead and do is kind of start to eliminate information from that mask that I think it was out of focus. And you'll see that I'm starting to make this kind of hole in the middle of it. That's really kind of, and you can see how by turning on and off the layer, I can start to tell, is this helping? Is it giving me a greater depth of field? Are more things in focus? And so I'm going in and just kind of manually looking through each of these different layers and using the masks to eliminate anything that's blurry. And so it's a time-intensive process like all of this. And you can see how I'm kind of turning on and off layers to double check and make sure and see how things are looking. To make sure that I'm doing this right, that I'm giving enough clarity to objects. And just going on and off, on and off. It's very tedious. It takes a while to do right. But the nice thing about the mask is you can always add and subtract more information the more you look at it. So you might do this for a while and then save it and then come back a little bit later and really start to double check it. So here, I'm starting to create all of my different masks. I'm gonna kind of just speed through this. And trying to identify anything that's out of focus and try to clean that up. Really get all those kind of little, you can see here, there's a chunk that's out of focus, and that's this kind of white chunk here. So I'll go in, so I look at the picture and I look at the mask to kind of make sure that I'm doing it and that it's becoming nice and clean and crisp. And so there's one, there's the second layer, there's the third, and the final layer to really bring it into focus. And you can tell that this is just the background layer, this is all out of focus. And then as I turn on those layers, different things come into focus. So we'll watch that one more time. And so magically, I've created kind of my own really great focal stacked image on my own. So I find that sometimes it's, or I find most of the time that it's best to do it yourself. So once I'm really happy with this, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to crop it down so that I don't have any edges. You'll also notice here that this image is 25 inches by 17 inches. So this image is also way too big. It's not 18 by 12 as is required for this assignment. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to crop out any of the edges where there was some kind of overlap, or like where images weren't necessarily overlapping. And then I'm going to go to image size. I'm going to shrink this guy down. And I'm going to make sure that it's 300 pixels. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press OK. And it's going to think about it. It's going to take some time to process it. And there we go. I have an image that's 18 by 12, exactly 300 pixels per inch. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save this image. And I'm going to make sure I'm pressing Save As to save it. So one more for this guy. I'll just full screen. So here I'm going to Save As. And I'm going to make sure that you have to always make sure that you're saving these in the right place. All right, I'm going to save this under my focal stacking project. And I'm going to make sure that I save it as, once again, a Photoshop and a JPEG. Photoshop, JPEG, and then we're going to save for web. So we're going to go through our naming conventions once again. First name, last name, project 2. So then once that is saved, I'm going to go ahead and go back, do File, Save Again, and this time I'm going to save it as a JPEG because that's what you submit to me as your final projects. Make sure that it's at a quality 9 and not any bigger because you'll make that file way too crazy. So it'll take some time to save that. And then we're going to go to Files, Export. Oh, let's reverse a little bit. So we'll go to File, Export, Save for Web. And then here, once again, PNG 24, and then we're going to change our image width to 25 pixels. And press Done. Oh, not press Done. See, I press Done. I do it all the time. Press Save when we're doing that. Press Save and make sure that we're saving it in our Art 344 digital portfolio folder and make sure that it is a PNG.